Welcome to the Crosscheck, business aviation squawk sheet that uncovers the stories, challenges, and careers shaping the industry today. I'm your host, Rob Hoffman.
And I'm Ian Lump.
Today we have a really special guest, someone who's not only an aviation leader, but also a champion for military veterans transitioning into the industry. Joining us is Joe Peebles, the CEO of Hire Vets, an organization dedicated to helping veterans find careers in aviation and beyond. Joe's journey from military service to the business aviation world is both inspiring and insightful. We're going to talk about how his experience shaped his leadership style, why veterans are such a great fit for business aviation, and how the industry can do a better job of bringing in top talent from the military. So whether you're in aviation, a veteran looking to make the transition, or just someone who loves to hear a good career story, you won't want to miss this conversation. So let's get into it. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Ian. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Joe, I know you have a military background. We'd love to hear just a little more about that part, that chapter, and how that kind of led you to where you are today in business aviation and Hire Vets.
Yeah, not a problem, man. So I didn't think that I was going to join the military. I remember I was in high school when 9/11 happened. And I remember that happening, and I remember feeling a certain way about it. And I remember getting a little older, getting closer to joining the military age. I remember watching the war online, and I was like, I do not want to be doing this. But I thought that the draft might be coming too. My dad was a retired first sergeant in the military, and they were talking about veteran families kind of being top of the line in the draft. So I was really freaking out, man, as a teenager, going through high school. I was really like nervous about the possibilities of what my life was going to turn into. So yeah, we moved a lot while I was a kid, and so
you were an Army bred, I take it, with your dad in the military. He was career.
He did 22 years, first sergeant in the infantry. Did not see combat, but he ran a basic training unit out of Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Just for the record, I don't know if you know this, Joe, but I'm a vet, and that's exactly where I did basic training in 1985. Yeah. So I don't know how old your dad is, but I'm wondering if we crossed.
He might have been your drill sergeant.
Oh no!
I think it was funny because I was in basic training, and my drill sergeant, my dad was his drill sergeant, and I remember he was like, for the whole time I was there, man, he was like, I don't like that name,
and put my finger on why.
Yeah, he couldn't figure out why. And on graduation day, my dad walked up in his dress greens with the cord on and everything, and that drill sergeant came up to me. He's like, I found out why I don't like you. That's awesome. Because my dad was his drill.
They never break character.
Yeah.
They're good like that.
So yeah, I joined the military in 2004. I joined as an infantry when I went to MEPS, and I thought I wanted to be Rambo, and I wanted to go special forces and do all this, crazy stuff. And my dad was like, no, you're not doing that. You're going to go work on helicopters because that's going to get you a job when you get out of the military.
Sage advice.
Yeah, he dragged me back up to MEPS and yelled at the recruiter, basically, made them change my MOS to 15 Romeo Apache mechanic. And so I did my basic training down in Fort Jackson as well, and then went up to Fort Eustis and learned about the Apache helicopter. And I remember walking into the hangar and looking at this. Those helicopters are big compared to, a Bell 206 or even a car or anything else I had seen at the time. And I just remember being like, wow, look at this, man. This is an attack helicopter. And I thought it was so freaking cool. So yeah, I learned how to work on the Apache, did my training, and then I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I did airborne school. I did airborne school in Columbus, Georgia, and then went to Fort Bragg as an airborne paratrooper, which was pretty awesome. My dad was also an airborne paratrooper, so I felt really like that was something I wanted to do with my life. So started jumping out of airplanes, did that whole thing, 5 jump chump, man. I never jumped again, and went to Fort Bragg, and I was one out of like 500 people. There's probably 5 of us that were airborne qualified. So I had a lot of pride in that, and a lot of just really, really proud of that heritage, being able to carry that down. But yeah, man, so I got into an aviation unit, started working on helicopters, did my thing, really started to learn the craft, went to another unit in Fort Bragg, and they were like, hey, we need door gunners on Chinooks. And they were like, if you want to be a door gunner, raise your hand. And
don't you know you're never supposed to volunteer for anything in the military?
Yeah, well, I didn't volunteer, man. So the platoon sergeant everybody's got their hands up, that wants to be a door gunner. And I had been reading a lot that Chinooks were getting shot out of the sky a lot. I was like, I'm not going to be a door gunner on Chinooks. And he said, put your hands down. I already got a list, and my name was the first one on the list. So I went up to him after that, and I was like, why are you going to do this, man? I just had a kid, I'm not trying to fly on these freaking death traps, and he was like, when we get back from Afghanistan, you'll thank me. And that was no lie. I flew over 200 missions in Afghanistan, doing resupply routes and dropping off guys into bad areas. And man, I loved every second of it. In all honesty, it was freaking amazing. And that's where I found out I love flying too. I have a lot of adrenaline issues now because we did a lot of crazy stuff out there. But I mean, that's kind of really what shaped my respect for crew coordination and my respect for anybody who flies on a whirlybird or on any type of aircraft, because there's a lot of trust that you've got to put into your mechanics and into your crew without really knowing those people until you do. And so that whole space, it really introduced me to a lot of really good guys. In the Apache world, it was a little different. We did not fly. And so I just worked on helicopters, and I did that for 2.5 years and thought I fully respected the space until I fixed the helicopter and then jumped inside and went for a flight on it. And then you're just thinking, did I put that bolt in right? Did I safety wire that piece right? It's like, there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong, and you have to really trust the mechanics that are working on your aircraft. So yeah, I did that, went to Afghanistan, fought in OEF Freedom. We lost some friends out there, and it wasn't all fun and dandy, but I was actually supposed to be on the gun for that flight that got shot down. And the guy that took the spot was an amazing sergeant. His name's Jesse. So Jesse took my seat. I came back into country a little too late to be on that mission, but my name was slated for that seat. And that happening really changed perspective for me, because it was like, man, I could have been in that spot and somebody took my spot, and that person is no longer here. Kind of changed the way that I operate in life, because I wasn't the nicest person to that person who took that seat, and it kind of changed the way that I treat people. So yeah, it was pretty life-changing event, all in all, the entire war. But yeah, Jesse Blaemeyers, out of Utah, phenomenal person. Lost his life on that. 5 other people did too. And so, man, a lot of respect for anybody who's out there doing that job. It's ridiculously hard, and you never know if you're going to come back or not. So
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it, and appreciate you having that perspective now, right? And it takes a lot to think about that. I'm sure a lot changed for you, but I do want to ask, speaking of change and transition here, I'm gonna try and shift gears on you a little bit, but
yeah, go ahead.
how you made that jump, kind of throwing it back to when you said you were jumping out of airplanes, but how'd you make that jump, that leap from the military to BizAv? How did you get into business aviation and where you're at now?
I kind of lucked out, man. I didn't even know that people worked on private jets. I never even fathom that. Like, I got out of the military, I went right back to Afghanistan as a contractor because I thought, I'm working on helicopters. Came back to the States a couple years later, and I was looking for a job, and Gulfstream down in Savannah was hiring. Somehow, some way, I got on a contract and went down there and started building G650s. I was working on serial number 4, and I worked there for 5 years. I built about 138 G650s. I didn't build them myself, right? We always had like 750 people building those, but
You had a hand in it, though.
Yeah.
yeah, I had a pretty big hand in it, and really enjoyed. Man, I walked into that hangar, and there was 4 G650s lined up side by side, and I was just like when I walked in on those Apaches, I was just like, all right, here we go. This is
Yeah,
cool.
I feel like walking in the Gulf Stream, you're at the pinnacle of business aviation with the Apaches. Same thing with the attack helicopters. No, you've certainly, it seems like everywhere, serendipity, you've landed in the right place. I don't know if it's serendipity. I think there's a lot that goes into the hard work. You kind of create your own luck in a certain manner. But that's pretty wild. So there you were for quite a few years at Gulfstream, and did the itch of entrepreneurship just grab a hold of you, or what happened then?
I thought I was going to retire at Gulfstream. This was my career. I was really moving up the ladder pretty quickly. I think you get promoted one time every 2 years at Gulfstream, and I was promoted 5 times in 4 years. And so my next spot was management. I was getting to know the general managers and the director of the G650 project. I was like, hey, man, how do I get in your seat? Like, that was my plan. I had no other plan in life at that point. I lost my job at Gulfstream. And I remember that's what sparked the entrepreneurship side of me. I really had a conversation with myself. I don't want to depend on a company for my paycheck, for my survival, and to put a roof over my kids' heads. I've got to figure out a way to do this for myself. And so I had a bunch of jobs in between that time and starting JP Aero, and I had a couple of businesses in that space too. And I just learned a lot about, or businesses I didn't want to run, and learned a lot about how businesses run and how businesses make money and marketing and all of that kind of in that space. It was 2015 when I lost my job, and I started JP Aero in 2019.
And JP Aero, talk us through what you do there.
So right now we provide AOG services, which is aircraft on ground emergency repair services for basically Part 91s and Part 135s, which is personally owned or chartered aircraft all throughout the Southeast. We also support the Bahamas, Spain, and Mexico. And so we just send out techs. We basically put professionals on site. They come, diagnose, and repair your aircraft. So that's basically what we do now. We are moving into scheduled maintenance. And so right now I'm looking at acquiring a couple hangar spaces here in Atlanta and selling those services as well.
All right, that's good. Sounds like business is good if you're looking to expand.
Yeah, it's always good, man. Business is always good. It just depends on how you look at it.
There's no shortage of added stress that comes with growth, but if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
What's your take on the health of business aviation right now? Obviously, you say you are expanding. And is this at the expense of other smaller operations? How are you competing with the big boys in the space?
You know, the big companies got all the money, man. You know, they've got the clients, they've got every, if you're a small entrepreneur like myself, it's really just finding your piece of the pie and doing really as good as a job as you can. All of my businesses come from word of mouth. You know, for the first 2 years, I never sent an email. I never did any of that. I just called people, went up and shook hands, told them who I am, and we barely got any business. You know, like, it takes a while for people to trust you, but once people do start trusting you, once they start to understand what you're about, and how you perform, word starts to get out. And so we started with a couple Part 91s, just servicing oxygen. That's literally all that people would let me do, is service their oxygen. And I was showing up in a Prius with an oxygen tank in the back. And, you know, with all the extra money that I saved from my other jobs, I bought a regulator and I was able to service oxygen. And eventually, you know, it became a tire change and service check. And, you know, now it's pretty much, we have about 13 regular customers that come in all the time, give us calls. And then I think total, we probably around 26 to 30 customers that we do regular work with on a yearly basis.
That's wonderful. You know, we always kind of focus on the fact that business aviation is a big time relationship business. And I love hearing stories like yours that, you know, you did pound the pavement, you did knock on doors, you did the hard legwork. And then once you've got your foot in the door, that's when the relationships really take hold. And it seems like all the good people in business aviation, they just continue to flourish, where the word spreads around and your business continues to grow. And it just sounds like you're one of those success stories.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to make it, man. So I appreciate that, those nice words, man. Sometimes you don't feel like it's always doing great, you know, and you just got to keep on putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. I'm not an extrovert, so building out these relationships and meeting people and shaking hands is not natural for me. I'm naturally very anxious in that situation. In fact, the first time I remember I just started my business. I had just quit. I had 3 full-time jobs when I started when I went full-time for JP Aero. I quit all my jobs, and I remember sitting outside of FBO for 3 hours just to go in and say, hey, I'm Joe Peebles. They all knew me, which was funny. Everybody knows me in the area because I go and talk to all these people all the time. And I literally sat in the car for 3 hours, just like,
Psyching yourself up.
Yeah, man. Like, it's just like these people are just gonna laugh at me and kick me out, because I did have that happen one time a couple months
Thunderstruck
before.
on the radio, just trying to get yourself going.
So
You can do
and
this.
it was so
Come on,
anticlimactic
Joe.
too.
You got this.
I walked in with a business card. I gave it to the CSR. I'm like, "Hi, I'm Joe, and I have this company called JPR. We do aircraft maintenance." She's like, "Okay, thanks. Have a great day." And I walked out. Then I went and sat by the next FBO and sat there for another 2 hours, just like dreading this conversation that I had to have. But, it is a lot of work. It's a lot more work than you could ever imagine. If you don't have a business and you're thinking about it, just be ready to put in some freaking work because it is not easy. It seems easy, seeing all these overnight successes on Instagram and TikTok and all these people that say, "Oh, it's so easy to make $1,000. It's so easy to be a millionaire." It is not. I beg to differ.
No, I think listen, people hit the lottery, literally and figuratively, but almost every overnight success story out there has a long history of a lot of hard work that got them to where they are. A lot of failures, a lot of frustration. So here you are today. How many employees do you have?
We've got 5 employees and about 4 contractors that do work with us. So we kind of cover the Southeast. I'm still owner operator, so I'm still working on airplanes myself. In fact,
You're still
half
turning a wrench.
yeah, half the time that I'm in a meeting with Ian, I'm turning a wrench. Got Google Meet on and the camera's on, and I'm over there working on an airplane. So, um, it is what it is for now. I would love to get to a point where I am able to hire a DOM, a CEO, COO, and have them run the operations of the organization. But I'm probably a couple years still out from that.
All right. So I'm going to use a pun here. So so JP Aero, it's hard work. Sounds like it's been a success so far, but there was a higher calling, perhaps. Talk to us about how higher vets kind of came into fruition. Sorry, I couldn't help myself on that one.
No, that's all right.
And more about that organization and what it's all about.
Yeah. So my transition was a little difficult. I think a lot of veterans go through a transition, and you're just like trying to find yourself. And I've talked to a lot of veterans, even that have been out for 5-10 years, and they still feel like they're in the middle of that transition. It really all came down to a friend of mine named Pat. We served in the military together. He was an Apache mechanic as well. He got out, not on the best of terms, and could never kind of get his feet under him outside of the military. Really started going down the spiral of depression, and started getting addicted to drugs and stuff like that. And his life just spiraled. I talked to him probably once a month in the beginning, and then it started to go into once every 6 months and once every year. And then, I was lucky to talk to him. But this was my best friend, Pat. He was my roommate for a couple of years. He dated my cousin. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was hoping he'd be part of my family and one of my friends for the rest of my life. But a couple of years ago, it was his birthday. He was living in a homeless VA shelter in Philadelphia and was going through some type of program training to help him kind of get his feet on the ground. And this was like his third or fourth one. And and I would have loved to extend a space for him to come live with me, but I had small kids and he was addicted to some pretty hard drugs. So I couldn't put my family at risk like that. And so I had thought about it. On his birthday a couple years ago, he OD'd in a crack house in freaking Philadelphia on his birthday. And that was the first time I sobbed in a long time. And I remember thinking, man, what could I have done to help Pat? In fact, the first name for this was called the Pat Project. That was what I was going to call this nonprofit. Really, after talking to a couple people, meeting a couple of people, kind of describing what I wanted to do with this idea of I want to help veterans and finding some like-minded people that have kind of been through the same situation. Man, I just decided, let's figure this out. Let's do this. Let's actually start to help veterans. Let's get this nonprofit up and running. And so this is all inspired through Pat and his story of trying to figure out life and not really having the correct resources or access to the resources that he needed. And so, yeah, Hire Vets was born out of that. And we established about a year and a half ago. And our goal is to help 10,000 veterans transition out of the military into civilian life. And right now, our main push is our main mission right now is to bring those veterans to BizAv. But our higher mission and our higher vision is to help veterans, period, with that transition.
Do you have any success stories of people who you've worked with to share?
We've placed one or two guys since we've started the organization. We still have zero funding, so all the funding has been sponsored by JP Aero at this point. And so we've just made a lot of connections and connected veterans with other job placement places, like some aircraft management companies. I don't want to say their name because they've not officially been doing stuff with us. Yeah, man, the success stories are we've just placed a couple of pilots into locations that are highly coveted spots. And the best part is they weren't a DEI hire. They were hired because they're actually really good at what they do and they were a really good fit for that space. And that's kind of the goal with hire vets is I don't want people to hire veterans just because they're a veteran. I want to make the veteran more attractable to the hiring agent. So what training and what ways can we create some type of a program to help these veterans be prepared for civilian life, but also have training in the soft skills that they need? Because everybody knows the military is the biggest leadership training organization on the planet. You go to a new job, you get trained. You start a new thing, you're getting trained. You're getting trained for everything. And so their leadership training is top notch. Now, how do we bridge that gap of being a leader in the military space and now moving into a position of leadership or just a position in the civilian space? That's kind of been our aim and our angle of attack, per se, to figure out how we can help.
And do you have any advice for companies looking to recruit and retain, veteran military, ex-military talent?
Yeah, you've got to have some type of a structure on growth, and you got to have some good leadership in charge. If you've got companies or guys that coming in and your leadership is piss poor, you're not going to be able to retain anybody, let alone a veteran. You got to have some good standards, high standards that people want to be able to maintain. And some really good leadership is really, I think, one of the biggest keys.
And you had mentioned the leadership is something that a lot of veterans bring with them. Once again, turning the tables here when you're speaking to companies about why should I hire a veteran? So they're typically bringing that to the table. Are there any other advantages or soft skills that a veteran will typically bring with them?
They're going to show up on time, no matter where they need to be. They're going to be in the right uniform, whether that's a Cinta's work uniform or a suit. They're going to be clean cut. They're going to be personable. And man, if you're looking for somebody that wants to thrive and be better at something, usually the veteran's going to be that. Not everybody's amazing, right? There's veterans of all walks of life, but
of course,
if you want somebody who's going to come in and set and follow the standard and try to make that standard even better, veteran is what you want to go with for sure. And then of course you get tax benefits, you get all the things, but you also have a package of somebody who understands what good leadership and bad leadership is already. Not all of us are exposed to that. Military is really well exposed. You can tell who's full of crap and who isn't really quickly.
You've mentioned it a few times, and I know that leadership training is huge in the military and a big part of what kind of built you. But I do want to ask you a little bit, as you're one of my kind of pseudo leaders with the Building Better Networks group and trying to spin into other things that you're doing and producing, like your podcast, Flight Level Zero. What leadership lessons have you learned over your past experiences, and how does that influence you today with everything that you've got going on?
Man, that's a
big question.
There's a couple of lessons. How you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so if you're going to do it right. I think that understanding that not everybody is on the same playing field as you. If you're in a leadership position, not everybody's as advanced as you in the self-development or the self-growth. And so you got to have some type of empathy. Something I struggle with for a long time. It's like, how come you don't get this? Like, it's simple, you should know this, but no, maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they need to learn it. And you've got to figure out ways to let people figure things out themselves so that they can have that aha moment. Because there was a time where I needed that aha moment too. Because I usually learn the hard way, which sucks, but man, I don't forget once I learn, because I did learn the hard way. Leaning on other individuals for their strengths, not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to look stupid, being honest and saying, hey guys, I don't know what to do here. How can we make this work? Being able to apologize when you're wrong is a huge thing in building trust with individuals. Man, I don't know. There's so many lessons that I've learned over just the past couple of years of running these companies and being a part of different organizations. It's like I think the biggest one is just being honest with yourself, to yourself, of where you are and where you sit, and understanding that failure is part of the process, and having a little empathy.
That's good. I know that
Great.
the biggest thing for me to learn within my time in business aviation is to be honest and be yourself. And it sounds a lot like a lot of what you're talking about here, right? So that definitely flows and explains why you've been a success in business aviation and with all the different projects you're doing. So nothing wrong with that. I think you're probably the third or fourth person we've talked to, Rob, where the
There
key
seems to be a theme here, Ian.
be
And it's a good
genuine.
one. It's a
Yeah.
good theme I like.
Yeah. Yeah, don't be a jerk, be responsible, be genuine, and good things always seem to come back to you when you're doing that. So sounds good, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah. It's really wonderful stuff that you've shared with us here today, Joe. We're running out of time, but for the viewers at home, can you kind of share where's the best place to find you or Hire Vets online?
Well, we have a website for Hire Vets. That's hirevets.org, and it's HIGHER vets.org. And then we're on LinkedIn. You can find me at Joe Peebles on LinkedIn. And if you come find me, you'll find Hire Vets. You'll find all the other stuff that we're doing as well. So,
Joe, I want to thank you for sharing your personal story. It was really touching, and I mean that sincerely. I really feel that you being here and sharing that's a part of who you are and what got you to where you are today, and you really kind of put the pieces together. It is really inspirational. Thank you, Ian. As well as always, a reminder to everyone else to follow us on LinkedIn, like, subscribe, and be sure to share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. Your review or feedback is greatly appreciated. It helps us spread the word. Any subject that you like covered, just leave it in the comments below. We will see you all next week with a new episode of The Crosscheck.